This program was provided to you in part by Rich Anzalone's RE/MAX A-Team.
Rob O'Keefe investigates Wild Marlboro, a new language program at Marlboro High School, the preservation of Marlboro's rich history. It's all coming up now in this issue of the magazine. Hello and welcome to another issue of the magazine. I'm Dan Ginden. In this month's Faces and Places segment, Kelly McLaughlin takes a look at Marlboro's Historical Society.
The city of Marlboro has been a growing community in Massachusetts since 1660. The Marlboro Historical Society has dedicated their efforts to preserve, educate, and celebrate with others the rich history of the city. The Marlboro Historical Society was founded in 1964 and established as an all-volunteer group of residents.
Over those years, like any other nonprofit organization, completely member-supported, completely fueled by the passion of the volunteers here at the Historical Society, it's gone through ebbs and flows, and over the last few years there's really been a resurgence in interest.
Current residents have been making a name for themselves while trying to revitalize the organization and increase its awareness and membership.
The website is one of the ways that we've made it easier for more people to learn about Marlboro and to have access to information that's here and in the archives and so on, and really tap into the membership and the volunteers and the board of the Historical Society.
We have archives with pictures, letters, articles that are very interesting for people to see, and we like to present them to the people of Marlboro, especially the children, because they really get very interested, and it's a nice way of learning history rather than memorizing facts and dates. It doesn't mean anything to them, but when they see articles or pictures of, oh, I know where that is, oh, I remember that, oh, I see that, it really makes them very interested.
Another initiative has been our Spring Historic Home Tour, which just took place recently and was a big success. We were so appreciative of the homeowners that participated, and it was so interesting. The homeowners made up really an interesting cross-section of Marlboro. There were some people who were new to Marlboro, only lived here a few years, and other people who had been lifelong or nearly lifelong residents and who lived in a home more than 20 years. And all those people opened up their homes. Another example of the Historical Society really working throughout the community to open up the Historical Society and help more people learn about the history of Marlboro and tap into its historic richness.
Free monthly meetings are open to the public and are held at the Peter Rice Homestead and Museum, which is maintained by the Society. The Peter Rice Homestead has a rich history of its own and has been featured in the Marlboro Historic Homes Tour. One would consider the Peter Rice and his family among the prominent households in early Marlboro.
One of the oldest homes in Marlboro, one of the oldest still extant in the Commonwealth in Massachusetts. It was built in 1688. Now, not this big house, but a smaller house, which is enclosed within it, and over the centuries has been expanded by the families who lived here.
Today, the Peter Rice Homestead is home to the Marlboro Historical Society and is open most Tuesdays from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. during monthly programs and special events, and for research and tours within 10 days' notice.
What we have is a huge collection of documents, photographs, and items that chronicle the history of Marlboro. Our photographic collection is extraordinary, thousands of photos.
Where can you see the Society in the community? The Historical Society reaches out to the younger community by giving away scholarships to students, and they make special presentations to schools, senior, and community groups.
I think it's important to know the past and how we got here and marvel at how little people had back in the olden days.
Applicants for the scholarship must submit a research paper on any aspect of Marlboro history. With a great resource right here in town, the $500 scholarship is given out annually.
It's a wonderful place if you're interested in the history of your house, if you're interested in the history of your family, or if you're just interested in history in general, which you could see through the lens of one community that has been in existence for almost 350 years.
If you are interested in scheduling a special presentation or interested in a tour of the historic Peter Rice homestead and the museum, you can contact the Marlborough Historical Society at 508-485-4763, or for much more information, visit their website at historicmarlborough.org.
In our newest segment, Wild Marlborough, Rob O'Keefe takes a look at how construction is increasing what you may see behind your home.
When you think of Marlborough, the city, you might first think of the downtown area. You picture a growing, busy suburb filled with traffic, buildings, and of course, people. But people are not the only residents of Marlborough, and houses are not the only place our residents live. So who are these other residents? Deer, specifically white-tailed deer. And while many may feel that illegal immigrants are causing a population boom, there's a much more real population issue coming from our more furry, undocumented residents. Within the Marlborough lines, there are a number of areas that deer have been known to reside. The Sudbury Reservoir area that connects with Callahan State Park is where local videographer Jim Coggins captured this footage. Many residents say they have seen deer in the Farm Road area. Conservation land in the northeast border, known as the Desert, contains 600 acres, and residents of Turner Ridge Road and Minahan Lane have reported sightings there as well. Areas that are off limits to trespassers, such as the Milham Reservoir and the Boston Scientific property, are always inviting spots for deer. And Jericho Hill offers a unique habitat as deer use an adjoining corridor to travel to Shoestring Hill not too far away. So to find out more, I headed out into the wilderness with Marlborough Conservation Officer Priscilla Ryder and wildlife enthusiast Harry Pacific. Our goal was to find signs of deer, and we were quite successful.
The really unique part about this is that there's the very top, and we'll see this, there's a wetland it's a really cool spring that's at the top, and it has blueberries, absolutely amazing blueberries, and it's just sort of this unique little thing. I mean, you don't usually think of wetlands at the top of the hill; they're always at the bottom of the hill because water runs downstream. But there's some kind of a spring feeding that, so it's a pretty neat area. And I think the reason we're going to see deer there is that it also, I mean, I think they feed up there, and it's a nice place to bed. It's pretty far away from the houses.
On top of the hill, some of the first signs we found were bedding spots, and many, many sets of tracks. While bucks remain solitary except for the mating season, does will travel and feed with each other, and are sometimes accompanied by a few feathered friends as well. Turkeys.
They can pick up color, and they pick up color a lot quicker. The deer doesn't pick up color. The deer acts on movement, the same as the turkey does. The turkey's got a lot sharper vision. More eyes to spot danger.
Other signs you can look for are droppings, tree rubs, and antlers.
Right along this trail right here, you can actually see the fur from here from the deer when he rubbed up against that little stick that was broken on the end. That deer was coming this way and we brushed up against it. In rubbing it, he snapped some branches off, plus he rubbed right through the outer layers of the tree, outer bark, right into the center of the tree. Mostly right where they attach to the forehead where the brow tines stick up. You get a bigger tree, the outside of the antlers will rub the outside of the tree. That's how you can tell pretty much what size of a rack you've got on that particular deer. If it's a big tree, a big deer can rub small trees, but a small deer can't rub big trees.
So when do they shed them? In the fall?
After the rut season, after the breed season, they want to concentrate everything on regaining some strength to make it through the winter. So they've been chasing does for 3 months, 3 weeks, a month, not eating, just
Right.
chasing.
Right.
and they become run down. And at that time is when the testosterone level drops, and the antlers soon fall off after that.
And they have that fur on them, and at the end they start rubbing it, and the fur starts coming off. And then usually when you find them, they're pretty free of the fuzz. What do you call the fuzz?
That's blood vessels.
Yeah.
That's
right.
blood vessels. That brings the nutrients as the antlers grow. It's one of the fastest. It's a bone actually.
Yeah.
It's not keratin like your fingernail.
Right.
It's a bone, and it actually feeds blood to it, and it grows. I think the rate is probably like a half-inch a week, half-inch a day, something like that.
It's
It's
amazing.
phenomenal. If they bump something when they're growing and being fed
hurts.
like that, it hurts and it causes damage to it. That's why you'll see some of these that have an antler growing down or an indentation in it or an offshoot from it. Found a setup in Westboro by the Westboro State Hospital that come off a deer that would have scored 155 inches of antlers.
Wow.
And for around this area, that's pretty darn good.
And as for encountering actual deer, well, it might sound something like this.
The buck will make a grunt noise, snort, that type of thing. A wheeze. Wheeze with a little whistle, that's an alarm signal. A stomp of the foot. If they're nervous, try to make you flinch or something like that. And usually when they see that and they realize or get a scent from you, they give that and off they go. The does bleat and they blat, but they're not bleating and blatting to get mated. The does, when they come in, they emit a scent when they're ready. The buck will follow them for days. While he's following her, if a bigger buck comes along and gets a whiff of it, then that's when you usually end up with a challenge. If they're both roughly the same size deer, then usually you'll have a fight. If the one is oversized, big deer, the other one usually just walks away.
So if you look out your window right now, you might say, "Hey, I don't see any deer. There can't be that many, right?" Well, just because you don't see them every day doesn't mean they're not here. In fact, they're now here in record numbers. Mass Wildlife estimates the deer population in the Commonwealth to be at or above 85,000. That's a whole lot of hoof. But things weren't always great for deer in New England. Before the first hunting regulations were set in 1910, there were fewer than 1,000 deer in Massachusetts. And we had only ourselves to blame for that statistic, as settlers combined with Native Americans to completely eliminate the species in Rhode Island and Connecticut. So why the huge growth spurt now? You would think that with all the deforestation and urban development in the deer's natural habitat, that we would further cause problems for the deer population. Well, once again, the blame goes right back on us. Our continuing encroachment into wooded areas actually benefits the deer. How is this possible, you ask? While other species may have issues adapting to our less wooded environment, deer are actually able to thrive. This is because deer are fringe animals. Animals who only rely on forests for shelter or for breeding, but prefer open areas to travel and graze for food. So with nearly every town having at least some areas designated as conservation land, we have created the ideal environment for white-tailed deer. Adding to this is the decline in both natural and human predation. Early settlers took out the wolf and cougar population in the area, which has never recovered. And with all the abutting housing in areas near conservation lands, hunting has been a safety concern for residents. In Marlboro, hunting is only allowed in the Desert Conservation Area, with the Sudbury side only allowing bow hunting, no firearms. Without severe predation, deer can only do what comes to them naturally, which is to reproduce without any self-limiting. That is, deer have evolved relying on predators to take young and kill potential mates, and so reproducing like rabbits, so to speak, was the only way to balance out their losses. And according to Mass Wildlife, barring severe winters, a healthy deer population can increase by 40% in a single year. Yikes. So how large can this problem become? I went back to Priscilla to talk about issues we may already be facing today.
It's a balancing act, and that communities are beginning to see many more accidents with deer, and that's usually a sign that the deer population is kind of more than the landscape can survive. And also, if you have too many deer in a landscape, they start really stripping out some of the plants, and then the plants don't have a chance to rejuvenate because the deer are eating it. It's sort of a starvation thing that everything gets stripped down, and then you start getting harm to the plant life.
And as deer deplete the smaller plant life that they love to eat, other species can lose their habitat. Not to mention, overgrazing can hinder new growth in wooded areas, which could leave barren land that is subject to erosion. Officials are constantly searching for the best way to combat the population boom. But with an animal that is so adaptable, it is likely this is a problem that will not be solved anytime soon. So while they're still here, let's learn how to live with our neighbors the correct way. One of the biggest no-nos of deer spotting is feeding the deer.
There is this cool desire to want to see animals and to lure them to you, but it's just a bad habit. Bringing them to where you are not only is a problem for the deer, because it may encourage them to come into places that they'll get hit by a car or be hurt that way. It also may mean that you may give them the wrong food. They eat green foliage in the summer, and their body can adapt to that. But in the winter, they eat bark and harder stuff, so their stomach has an ability to do that. So if you feed them the wrong thing at the wrong time, they can't digest it.
Out west, they actually brought hay in and alfalfa in for the elk herds and fed them, and all them elk that they fed died with full stomachs. You really don't want them in your yard. You don't want to attract them. If you put bird seed out and there's a lot on the ground, they'll come in and feed on that. The coyotes will. You start attracting animals, you get coyotes coming in, you put your little cat outside or your small dog, that's candy for them.
The message for wildlife is simply to let them be where they are, let them choose what they want to eat, and don't attract them, and don't try to feed them stuff that you think they would eat.
Not being able to feed deer right in your backyard isn't such a bad thing. Now you have an excuse to get outside, get some exercise, and see some wild animals in their natural habitat while it's still here. When you do actually spot a deer, stay as still as possible. Most deer will run away when they see humans. Unless, of course, you're this guy. In which case, you should probably just stay home. But in reality, as long as you don't douse yourself in deer urine, you won't get attacked. I promise.
Do not use on your body. Could provoke an attack. It tastes pretty bad.
Sorry, ladies, he's taken. Thankfully, we have Priscilla and Harry to leave us with some words of wisdom.
The best thing is to figure out how to track them, see where they are in the woods, sit quietly, watch them.
The deer are here. They have no other place to go. They're not going to go down the Arcade Plaza or the Solomon Pond Mall if they can help it. So you walk through their territory on a walking path, and chances are you're going to see something.
For the magazine, I'm Rob O'Keefe.
The Marlboro Public School System is trying hard to branch out and teach kids about all different kinds of cultures. Kristen Doucette takes us inside our schools.
Most Americans, when asked about China, may mention the 2008 Summer Olympic Games in Beijing. But students here at Marlboro High School have a much more complex view. Marlboro Public Schools are looking into the future of language instruction, and according to World Language Coordinator Maureen Grulich, Marlboro schools are going beyond the everyday high school Spanish, French, and Latin.
Marlboro has been wonderful in allowing us to run this program without cutting another language. And that would have been really hard for me to look at cutting French and bringing something else on board that was an unknown, not to mention the students who are already engaged in French learning here and the teachers who are so invested in the program. I was very gratified by the reception of the school committee and the administrators in this school and in the middle school to allow me to go forward with this quest without saying I would have to cut Latin or French. Certainly Spanish I don't think would ever be cut. And this is not thus in some other districts where they're being told if you want to bring in Chinese you have to cut something else.
Grulich and now Superintendent Mary Carlson visited Beijing last summer with a delegation of American educators before launching their school's Mandarin instruction.
And this trip was designed to enlist the support of the people that make the decisions in the district about what language to bring on and what not. And this was a group of educators that went. There were 1,000 of us from South Korea and from the United States.
To help represent this new initiative, Frances Cook, a college professor, was hired to execute this program.
I can't imagine having picked anyone with more enthusiasm. She relates very well to the students. She has a great command of Chinese and knows how to handle American students. She knows about pedagogy for high school students. That was our fear with some of the native speakers that we had interviewed, that they weren't certified, and she is certified. So she's the total package.
Coming from higher ed, this was an adjustment for me to enter the public school kind of sphere, and I've had to adjust curriculum, pace, speed, the actual materials, and everyone has been very, very supportive.
The Mandarin written language is complex. Instead of having 26 alphabet letters, there are endless characters that can mean a whole word or phrase.
Other European languages that we teach here don't have a tone system, so that's been something we've had to train students on very specifically, differentiating tones, and they're making a lot of progress with that, actually. The younger you start learning to differentiate tones, the easier it is.
In spite of the complexity, Cook states that the students pick up the language like sponges. Her class covers listening, speaking, writing, and reading.
Students are really learning how to write using pinyin transliteration system. It's basically using the alphabet to transcribe the sounds of Chinese.
Due to the newness of the program, all grade levels are currently being taught in the same class. This can pose challenges to the teacher in charge.
Teachers are wonderful. They relate, beautifully with the students. They're very accommodating in terms of differentiating instruction in a classroom where they might have college prep kids and honors kids in the same classroom, and they bend over backwards to keep those language learners. And rather than lose them when they can't fit something in a schedule, they'll accommodate them and do a combo class.
I've seen a very broad distribution in grades, and it does not correlate to age, grade level. What I see it correlate to is the credit options. Folks who are pushing themselves in the honors option are succeeding in pushing themselves. At CP level, we're kind of finding that where that baseline is going to be. So this has been, a learning experience for me as well in terms of student performance.
For a special treat one day, Cook invited a native speaker to the class.
They can listen, they can read, they can write. That's a good thing to learn another language in America.
They took the project very seriously, and they prepared very well for it, and they discharged their assignment with such alacrity and professionalism that I was very moved. I complimented them, and I think it was one of those sit back and aha type of moments. Wow, you guys can actually have a conversation in Chinese with someone using no English, using no assistance. You just related to a classmate, and the fact that, or schoolmate, the fact that our guest speaker was an actual community member here in Marlborough and a schoolmate just made it much more moving to me that I could facilitate that connection.
These tiny laptop computers are making a major difference for Mandarin Chinese students at Marlborough High School.
We're very lucky to get donated 30 tablet PCs, which you see here in this lab, and they're small. It's a small venue, so it's a good thing because we pack a lot of students in here.
The language lab here, as you can see, is equipped with a smart board and projector and 30 laptop PCs set up with microphones and audio equipment. And all of this really is through the good work and effort of our language coordinator, Maureen Grulich.
The principal was on board with me and allowed me to go forward with my request. Many schools have a language lab connected with their world language department. So again, I think I happen to be in the right place at the right time, and it really is beyond my wildest expectations.
All of our languages make use of the lab facilities here: Spanish, French, and also Latin. But we try to get in here as often as we can. It's a marvelous facility, and our students really enjoy it.
Earlier in the year, students delivered a presentation using the smart boards in the language lab.
The students had the opportunity to draft, type, and then stand up and speak to deliver their projects in Mandarin. So it was a longer project, and you saw the end part of it.
For students, learning Chinese is part of living in a multicultural world. Students enjoy the challenge.
I think that they are still, even at this point in the year, fourth quarter, I think they're still very motivated to learn more about a culture outside of, the Eurocentric culture that we have here in America.
Parental interest and the growing recognition of China as a world power are the major factors driving interest here in Marlboro.
The parents that I've had contact with are very excited to have this component added to the language program, and they are pushing for more Mandarin here at the high school. They want it extended through the middle school, and the ideal would be K through 12 or even K through 16 if you wanted to promote true foreign language education in the U.S.
The Mandarin Chinese program has its roots in an announcement by the federal government 2 years ago in which school districts were told they could apply for a grant through the National Language Acquisition Program to help introduce to students a language which was specified as being of significance to future U.S. security.
There's a ton of money becoming available on the federal level, and I would love to see Marlboro compete for some of those dollars.
Students will now have the option to visit the countries they have been learning about through a non-funded school trip.
We're planning right now to take a trip to China. We'll be visiting Beijing, Xi'an, and Shanghai during the April vacation next year, 2009. I want to emphasize this is not a school-sponsored trip, though it is traditional for teachers in the World Languages Department to take groups abroad. We'll be going with a company called EF Tours. They've been around for ages and ages and have been used many times by faculty members here. And we have about 10 students who are interested in signing up, and we're hoping that that trip grows.
Enrollment in Marlboro High School's Mandarin classes are already growing for the upcoming year. I'm Kristen Doucette at Marlboro High School for The Magazine.
And finally today, Kelly McLaughlin takes a look at the New England Safety Services.
New England Safety Services is a company specializing in health and safety training like CPR and first aid.
We're a health and safety education and consulting company.
David Barnett, owner and president of New England Safety Services, has been teaching for 21 years for various other organizations. In 2001, he started his own training services. He and about 5 other staff members offer training classes from New Hampshire to the Cape, providing classes about 2 times a week when they come to Marlboro.
We offer programs from the American Heart Association, the American Safety and Health Institute, and the Emergency Care and Safety Institute.
David tells us that the most commonly taken course is usually the adult CPR classes, which are required for many jobs and also taken for personal interest.
For example, today's class here in Greater Marlboro program, they're doing adult CPR and first aid. I was just with this past weekend doing a group of Boy Scouts that are going to do a high venture activity in the summer. They are being required by the Boy Scouts of America to take a wilderness first aid class.
Classes are offered in adult CPR, infant and child CPR, CPR for the community and workplace, CPR for the professional rescuer, first aid, pediatric first aid, wilderness first aid, AED training, babysitting safety, disaster preparedness, emergency responder, and first responder programs. Class sizes fall in all ranges to accommodate the needs of the students.
With first aid, we're looking at, we could go up to maybe 15, 20 people.
Some people are taking these courses for the first time, while others are relearning the skills, some of which have been updated since their last training.
Well, CPR is good for 2 years, first aid is good for 3 years. So some people that are going to be taking today's class are people who have done training with me in the past, or it could be some new people that are coming in.
If you want more information about taking one of these courses, you can contact the New England Safety Services at 508-624-9195 or visit them on the web at nessinc.net. For the magazine, I'm Kelly McLaughlin.
That's going to do it for this issue of the magazine. I'm Dan Ginden. Be sure to tune in June for our newest issue when we take a look at the Wayside Country Store. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next month.
This program was provided to you in part by Rich Angelone's RE/MAX A-Team.